Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing our first drill maintenance on the 60 centimeter shallow aquarium. If you remember, we set this up a couple of weeks ago. We flooded it a couple of weeks ago, and if you've been following me on Instagram, you've kind of been seeing some of the challenges that I've come across with the initial flooding. But right now everything is going really well, and it's time to do the first real maintenance session and get rid of some of the things that are a little unsightly in the aquarium. So let me show you what I'm talking about and then we'll get started. So it's a little bit hard to tell on camera, but there's a little bit of a cloudiness to the water since I've been adding beneficial bacteria. Not all of that bacteria colonizes or survives, so there is a little bit of cloudiness, but it's not bad. We also have some mulm and a little bit of algae appearing, which is not expected in the early phases. Some of this I'm not going to remove. For example, that stuff on the twig, it'll go away on its own. But some of the ones on the leaves I do want to get rid of, just because I don't particularly like it. We're also going to give a scrub to the rocks as well. Now, the main issue that we ran into with this setup is one that I've been sharing a lot on my Instagram page, but we actually had an ammonia spike. And so I had to test the water more regularly than I probably would have, and had to do more water changes that I would have preferred, especially when doing the dry start method. Now, it wasn't because the dry start method did not work, it's actually a mistake that I made. So when we first flooded the aquarium, the goal was to immediately add the cycled media, the filtration, and all of that. However, life just got in the way, and it took me a couple of days for me to get the filtration and cycled media all installed and get the water all circulating. So for those 2 days or 48 hours or so, what ends up happening in a new aquarium is that anything that's melting or anything that's being released from the fertilizers that you've added to the soil, or if you're using new soil, there's going to be a lot of ammonia that's leached into the water column. Now, it wasn't a lot for this one because obviously I'm using recycled soil and leaf litter, so there wasn't a lot of ammonia that was released into the aquarium, but it was enough to cause a little bit of ammonia burn to some of the plants. As those leaves decompose, they release even more ammonia. So I did get a bit of an ammonia spike, which meant that I had to test about twice a day, once prior to a water change, once afterwards, to make sure the levels were low enough. And I did that for about 3 days. And then since then, it has been running just fine. So I just tested this about 20 minutes ago. And right now you can see that there's still a slight greenness, very mild, to the ammonia test. So there might be a trace of ammonia in there, but not enough to affect the quality of life for the fish. With that said, we're still going to change it because long term you don't want this to build up. I tested it the other day, it wasn't any higher. So now it's a good time to get the water change going. I also went ahead and tested our nitrates, and we have a nice healthy amount. This is about 15 to 20 parts per million. I like it around this amount because it really does help the plants grow. You just have to make sure you keep your maintenance regimen steady so that you don't get algae issues. I've also gone ahead and added CO2. And the reason being is because the CO2 is actually on this aquarium, but that's growing really fast. But I wanted to add it in here to give the plants kind of that kickstart that they needed. So my plan wasn't originally to add all of this, the CO2, and to test so vigorously, but because I let the aquarium go for a couple of days without adding the media, it allowed ammonia to build up more than I would have wanted, and therefore now we're just taking care of that. But as you can tell, the fish are happy, they're eating really well, they're breeding a lot. They eat all their fry and eggs, so nothing's gonna survive. But everything's looking well. Now we just need to maintain it and make it look pretty again. So we're gonna start off with a glass clean. There's not a lot of algae on the glass. In fact, there's almost none. It's mostly just moldy residue. Now, most people would have never shared that they had an ammonia spike while they have fish in the aquarium and that they just took care of it like that. I feel like, particularly on social media, a lot of people would tell you that you're doing this wrong, or you're hurting the fish, and they're not wrong. Ammonia is not good for fish long term or in high amounts. But you'd be surprised at how many times your fish have probably tolerated some level of ammonia in your aquarium, because everything is decomposing. At all times, there's something that's decomposing, whether it's leaves from your plants, fish waste, fish food, all of that is decomposing. And unless you have a very strong biological filtration system, which you should, that's the goal that you should have for your filtration, there's going to be traces of ammonia. And plants are great at absorbing ammonia. Oops. And then of course, your biological filtration takes care of the bulk of that. But I'm here to tell you that, you're gonna have an ammonia spike at one point or another if you're in this hobby. Just like you're gonna have algae, just how you're gonna have fish at some point that will get sick and die. And if you're sharing any of this on social media, you're gonna have someone who's gonna try to call you out for it, and so be it. That's just part of the game. I don't particularly get annoyed by it or offended by it. Mistakes happen in no matter which hobby or anything that you do in life. So, with mistakes comes the opportunity to learn and grow and to accept them. So if there's any one of you in the comments that's going to get upset with me for having ammonia in my aquarium because I should have, known better, that's okay. I told you, like I mentioned, I should have. The goal was to get my filtration all set up the moment of, but life got in the way. But I also know my aquariums, I know these fish, I know the materials I'm using really quite well. So I knew I was taking some risks by not dealing with it at that moment, but in the end we took care of it. And nobody is worse for wear. All right, so the glass is clean. Now I'm just gonna scrub some of these rocks with a dedicated toothbrush. If you do use a brush of any kind, I highly recommend you use one per aquarium that you have. Brushes are probably the #1 culprit at transferring algae from one aquarium to another. Oh gosh. Also, you're not a aquascaper or fish keeper unless you've hit your lights or made a huge water mess. That's just part of it. So I've been in the hobby now, 6 years or so. I still would not say that I'm an expert or anything like that, to be honest with you. I consider myself a hobbyist, meaning that I do this for the fun and enjoyment of it. I learn what I need to in order to make that part of the hobby enjoyable for me. And while I have experienced a few things, there's some things that I haven't and I don't have knowledge of. For example, I haven't really had to deal with fish illness, which, knock on wood, I am grateful for, because getting fish meds in Canada is nearly impossible. Actually, I think it is impossible. I don't think anyone sells them, but so if someone were to ask me, hey, how do I deal with ick? I'm like, I don't know. No idea. Haven't had to deal with it. And I count myself really, really lucky in that regard. And I think it comes down to making sure you're getting fish and livestock from a reputable source is probably the most important, the biggest preventer to having to deal with fish health issues. It doesn't mean you can't get them at your local fish store, but ask questions, Is the fish wild caught? Is it from a reputable breeder or a hobbyist? How long have they been in this tank? Do you dose your tanks? Are they on a single or a large filtration system? Do you have any other fish that are sick that are on the same filtration system? And a good fish store will tell you all of these things and may even help you out. I've heard of cases where a fish store is like, hey, we've had this fish that's been exposed to something. We don't think it's going to be an issue because they've been fine, but here, take home some, preventative or some salts or something on us. Just kind of to show that, they're trying to be transparent with what they're doing. something else that I wanted to do is I wanted to add more biomedia. I ran out of mesh bags, but I did have an extra set of stockings. And I'm gonna make little mesh bio bags to add to the filters. So it's pretty straightforward. You just cut a section of it, starting with the toe, for example. Throw your biomedia in it and make a knot. There you go. And I usually like to have 2 mesh bags of biological filtration. So I have 1. We're gonna add the other one as I make a huge mess. It's a bit hard to tell, but there you go. There's the original mesh media and then the new one that I just added. And the reason I like to have 2 in a filter is because when I set up the next aquarium, I can take one of those out and immediately cycle the new setup. All right, so maintenance is all done. I let it clear up for about an hour there, just so that you could see how great it looks when it's all nice and clean. Very nice. Now the light right here, I have it at about 70%. I've increased it about 10% every week, so I'm hoping by the end of this week we'll pump it up to 80. Ideally, I'd like to get up to 100, but that'll just depend on how much algae I get, but everything is growing in nicely. So next on the list of projects is this ADA 60P. Okay, thanks, Dor. Let's... Okay, so yeah, the next project that we have is the ADA 60P, which is sitting on this fluval Rona, what are they called? Stands. There it is. I'm not 100% certain what I want to put in here yet. That's my DIY light stand. In case you haven't seen the video, I show how to make one of those. But I still need to get a light for it. I had the fluval one hanging on here, but we've changed that. And I don't know. Do you want to see a black water aquarium? Should we go like a very manicured aquascape? Do we want to do more of a natural, wild planted setup? I'm not sure yet. I was going to use this for a contest tank, but of course, like I did last year, I just ran out of time. Life just got too busy, and I don't want to leave it empty until next year, so we should do something with it. Well, that's it for this one. Thanks for tagging along as we maintain the 60 shallow for the first time. Hopefully now we can just kind of wait and watch it grow and enjoy what the fish and other critters will add to it eventually. We'll do with this layout. Let me know what you think we should do with the 60P, if you have any ideas for that. Otherwise, please don't hesitate to subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and we'll go from there. But have a good one, and we'll see you on the next one.